Well, it's 1 o'clock and we have what we have. So I think, hi, Robin. So I think
Yeah, most of us see it afterwards anyway.
yeah, I think most people are going to watch it later anyway. So Ben's, it's 1 o'clock. You're on time. I'm going to start on time. So essentially, I just kind of tell you what I done and how we're doing it going forward for the most part. As you know, well, I'm Brenda Zablakis, as the advertisement said, and I've been doing real estate now for, I don't know, going on 15 years-ish. And I've always been independent. I never really worked on a team until the last couple of years, and I've been working with Debbie. But nothing in my business has really changed in terms of how we do business. And back in 2012, when Zoom was actually brought onto the scene, I had actually heard about it through a call similar to what we're doing today. And I, at that time, was doing probably 30% of my business with Chinese investors. And so they're obviously not always coming to country to look. A lot of times they were, but I can tell you I probably closed about half a dozen to a dozen homes that my clients had never seen until they showed up to get their keys, not even to do a walkthrough. And so, and how we done that is I was basically having a lot of my clients sign um, a disclosure saying they haven't seen the house, they hold me, not responsible, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they had to have their own inspection. Sometimes they had family that was in town or friends that would meet me from time to time. But for the most part, I really wanted the consumer to know what they were getting because I have never been taken to court or sued, and I didn't want this to be something that happened. When I got into real estate, my background was financial services. I had to have more education to sell somebody a $5,000 mutual fund investment than I had to have selling them a $500,000 house. So I was really paranoid when I first got licensed back in 05, 06. And I probably spent my first 2 years with a button chair because I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything I could. I did not want to misrepresent my clients. So I earned my CRS designation during that time, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, Zoom became part of my business model, but not to the extent that we're using it today. I don't know if anyone was using Zoom to the extent that we're using it like we have in the last, 60 days or so. But I used it mostly on my cell phone, and I used it so because I don't have iPhone, I'm an Android girl, so I would use it as in lieu of FaceTime. So I can actually have a live face-to-face conversation and they can see what I see. They can see me driving into the community. They can see me driving through the community. They can see me walking through the property and describing it the same way that we do our virtual tours right now that we're doing for our clients. So it's really nothing new and nothing to be afraid of. And what I really liked about it back then is they only see my little avatar picture. I didn't have to be live like we are today. And they got to see out, not looking back at me, to see my double chin and my funky faces. When the camera gets just certain right, you're just like, you look like a Martian. So I was very successful doing that. And so here we are today. Never thought I'd be using it the same way. So now that we're doing a lot of our client consultations remotely and online and using technology, Debbie asked me if I would share with all of you kind of what we're doing. And so today I just want to kind of show you, I thought I'd have a lot of new agents on the call, and they might be joining later, or they're going to be efficiently mapping their time and they might be looking at this video later. So I will share my screen with you. And I actually have not created for myself a formal buyer consultation form, but I'm going to tell you the sheets that I use and then 2 resources that you can actually use as well. I'm not sure if Ismar or Cassie got my email about adding to this link the 2 presentation forms that I'm going to use. And I'm going to see if I can add, if you give me 1 second in the chat box here. I think I have, I want to add something here for you. It's basically, it's an acronym, right? So when you're doing your buyer consultation, nothing's changed. You're really looking at, you're going to get a lead from some source. It's going to be a referral. It's going to be internet, it's going to be Facebook, your web page, whatever the source is going to be. You're probably going to end up having some kind of dialogue with them over the phone as your first meeting. And usually that's where we do a good job of building rapport with our people, and you're really going to learn a lot about them. And what I just posted, I have 3 people that want. I have 3 people that want on that have not been light on yet. So let me see. Cassie, are you still on the line with us?
Yes, I am.
Sounds like we have people who are trying to get into the call but can't get in. Or do we have a host having to give them permission, or?
They shouldn't. They should be able to just click on the link and register and fill out their registration and then get on.
Is that what you're seeing, Robin? Is that the question?
I'm trying to text them back and forth because I told my whole team to get on this, and 3 of them are trying to get on and can't. So I'm telling them.
Okay, so
I can. Okay. I was like, I can email you the link, or if I can, whatever you need.
Yeah. So, Robin, if they can go in and pull up Isamar's email from today, there's a link on it that they just click that, they register, and then that will bring up the link.
I sent it to all of them this morning.
Okay.
I'll send it.
All right. And it's going to be recorded. So if anyone needs to catch up, you haven't missed much, just who I am, big deal. And we're just talking about what I use and how I've used Zoom in the past. So essentially, you're still building, when you get your lead, you're going to build rapport with your client, and you're really going to be starting asking them questions. And in the notes in the chat, you'll see that I use one of the acronyms. I think I got that from maybe Pat. And basically, every time you have a conversation with someone who wants to buy and they decide they want to ask questions, they're going to tell you, what are they looking for? Like, where do they want to be? Are they Summerlin people? Are they Henderson people? Are they North Las Vegas people? What is it? What price point they think they're going to be in. You're going to try to ascertain what their motivation to buy is, so we like to try to eliminate, tire kickers. But in the current environment, since everyone's online and, you're not really rushing around town to meet them to show them at a property these days, you're going to be able to control that. I think we have more motivated people now that we're talking to than ever before. And next thing is we're going to ask them, basically, are they working with another agent? Do they have a relationship with another agent? Because one of the things you want to rule out, which happens a ton in this business, is, oh, by the way, I have an aunt, an uncle, a cousin. They said they can help me instead. So you want to make sure you're limiting that up front, because you don't want to invest 60, 70 hours to find out that when they get ready to buy something, that you're not the only agent involved in the deal. And then, have they talked to a mortgage company yet? Have they tried to apply for a loan? Do they know what kind of loan they're going to get? And then you're going to look for the appointment. And so on the appointment, this is where this online Zoom appointment can actually kick in, is saying that I would really love to have a face-to-face conversation with you. And we have a technology to do that, to keep us safe during these COVID times, or for an efficient use of your time. So depending on where they live, they're not driving anywhere. And you might have to have an email that is prepared and telling them how to get onto Zoom. So hopefully everyone on here has a Zoom account. As you know, there is a free version. And when you're only having a conversation with one other person, it gives you about an hour, I think, which is more than enough time. If you're doing a listing presentation, you might want the pro version, which is like $15 a month. But that's something for you to gauge. There's ways to do that if you want to stay in the free version, because I know that we like to tell you, if you're not making any money, don't be spending money, don't be signing up for stuff. And the free version might work if you do it wisely, because you can cover a lot of ground on a phone conversation. And then you can do some additional rapport with the Zoom appointment like we're going to talk about today. Any questions so far? I have 2 faces. I have an avatar of Robin and I see Gail. Thanks, Gail, for letting me see a face. So I love to be able to see who I'm talking to. I feel like I'm just rambling over here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the screen share and kind of show you the 2 things that I use. And let me get rid of my email here. Okay, so I have on screen share, and I'm going to go back and I don't know what this thing is doing. Give me 1 second to get rid of this guy. All right. Let me see if this will pull to the front. Nope. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to figure out how I have this Zoom thing on here for some reason.
It's because you're logged into, you're in a meeting. You can't get rid of it until the meeting's done.
Okay, but I can move it.
Yes, you can minimize it.
Okay. So I have 2 attachments on the screen, and this is kind of what I would do if I had a buyer and I was doing a Zoom call as we speak. So I would actually have the things I want to show them. And there's a couple ways you can go about it. So I have, let me just see this little page thing up here. I want to show you this as part of our housekeeping item. So when you see that, you can actually plug in a page number as opposed to making a client watch you scroll through something. You can actually just put the page number that you want on. And as you get familiar with whatever you're going to present to your client, then you would be able to do that jump around as well. So I put 2 things. I'm not sure if they were able to put these things online for you so you can download them. If not, I will post them in our 605 group. But you have access to this in Command. This first one is the buyer's guide, the new buyer's guide in Command. There's a listing presentation and there's a buyer's presentation in here. I like the format of this one, and it really has, I'm going to kind of scroll quickly because there's nothing really here to see yet. But this has a lot of great information in it. I like the flow of it, but there's things in here that you're not going to want to just publish because they don't really apply to us in Las Vegas. This is a generic outline designed by Keller Williams as a buyer's guide, but it talks about how they do business. And as you know, most escrows are round tables, right? Only the West Coast does these escrow closings. So there's things in here you're going to change, and I'll highlight a few of those for you today. But my goal today is to show you a couple tools that you can use. So if you have not done a buyer's consultation in the past, or you're in the process trying to create this buyer's consultation, here's some things that I do. I've used a guide from Chicago Title. You can get these from any title company. They all have them. They don't cost you any money, and they do have an electronic version. So this thing is 28 pages. I can tell you right now on a Zoom call, I am not flipping through 28 pages of anything. The buyer's guide from Keller Williams is 30 pages. Is it all great information, great content? Yes. But I can tell you, heads will roll, eyeballs will be rolling, people will be taking a nap, and they're going to go next. You have to be succinct in what you're going to deliver to your client in these one-on-one conversations. So most of my early career, if you will, I didn't spend money creating a lot of marketing materials, branding stuff when I was a solo agent. Even I could always call myself as a group because there was me, my husband, and an admin of some sort. So I always defaulted to these buyer's guides, and I use these buyer guides a lot in electronic version, engaging consumers when I can engage them online. If I can determine that they're a first-time home buyer or that sort of thing, they're great for that. Now, if I have a seasoned buyer and they're on their 5th or 6th property, they're not going to want to see none of this, right? What they're going to want to see is who am I? How can I help them? What things have I sold in the past? And those are things that you can create as individual PDF talking points that if you have this one-on-one conversation that you can add to your screen to show. So you're going to have to create PDFs of what you want to show and have them readily available. So like on this buying guide, the reason that I put it up here is because I like the layout of this, and I would basically recommend taking some of the data points that are in this and adding them to the Keller Williams version. So you will have this Keller Williams version that you can have more branded to you, and you can go to page. Remember I told you if you know what page you want to get to, you can jump to it. So like on this buyer's presentation with the Keller Williams form, the page 6, this one talks about getting, I'm sorry, it's page 7 actually, talks about the app, your Keller Williams app. I'm probably not going to necessarily start out this conversation with the client But how I used it significantly, especially when clients are, hey, we're going to be in Vegas, we're coming to town, that is still going to happen. I've had it happen to me last weekend. So you're not going to be doing everything from the captain's chair of your office. We can do a lot of it this way, but you're still going to be out and about in the community. And this will be when they're coming to town. This is a good time to put the mobile app conversation before them, and we can talk about scripts around that. But how I've used it, especially when people were coming to town to kick tires, they'd even say, if you can show us 2 or 3 houses, and then we want to drive around. Well, when they're driving around, I don't want them calling sign calls. Sorry, listing agents, I don't want them calling your sign to find out about a property. So what I do is my first appointment with them, I'm going to tell them to download this mobile app and why they don't want to use Zillow, all the other mobile apps that are out there, because this one will not only allow them to get questions to me very quickly that I can respond to. They're not waiting. I always tell them, if I'm having trouble getting hold of these listing agents to answer my questions, so will you, and to make the most use of your time. And then this app will also give people directions to a property, so they can just hit on the arrow, right? So you don't get lost while you're here in town. And from go to property, this will be the best way to do it. It will be your GPS and your property data, and staying in touch with me so I can answer any questions that you may have. So figure out the mobile app for yourself and make sure people are using that. The next part on this guide is 8 to 11. This is where you're really going to have to go in and make your modifications. But if you're new to having a buyer's consultation, you haven't had one before, or you feel like you can up your game, they did a good job of asking some questions. And there's some things on here, quite honestly, that I would go in and change, because it's just my style. And it may not be your style. You might like it the way it is. But like one of the things is, if I was just talking to, I'll pick on Gail for a minute. If I was just meeting Gail and we're talking about, she's interested in real estate in Las Vegas, I'm going to try to find out the basic questions that are in your chat sheet there. But once she's decided at some level that I think we have a little bit of a connection, I would basically say, Gail, who in our, because usually it's because she, me, my husband, me and my dog, me and my mom, whoever is like, Gail, I know you're the one who reached out to me. Are you going to be the main contact for your family in this process? A lot of times I have families that want me to send emails to both parties at the same time. If I'll do text to both parties at the same time. And sometimes I get a spouse who runs everything through one spouse and they'll share it with the other. So how is it that your family works? Try to get that information, because one of the things that you don't want to do is alienate one of the parties just trying to get out the starting gate. You're going to talk about, you have a job transfer, what's bringing you to Vegas? Are you retiring in June? Whatever it is, try to find that information. And then, you're going to ask them about their purchase price and are you paying cash, And one of the coaches I've heard recently, they were talking about, they like to ask people, so are you renting or do you have a house to sell, kind of thing. And a lot of people say they love to take pride and say, oh, I own a house. I've bought many houses. I'd love to get that experience from them. Like, when's the last time you bought and sold real estate? Because I want to know how I'm going to tailor my conversation to that person. How much of this presentation is the basic nuts and bolts that I might touch on, but not elaborate on because they're knowledgeable. Now, if they haven't bought any property in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm going to elaborate probably a little bit more than someone says, yeah, we just moved 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And if that was on the West Coast, I know how to tailor my conversation. If it's on the East Coast, I need to know how to even modify my conversation in that regard. But they're always going to know what price range they're going to want to be in for the most part. They're going to give you some kind of range and you're like, great. Now, how did you learn about that price point? Did you find out from a lender? I know a lot of times people are qualified to buy much more home than they want to spend. And I'm really cool with that. We want to make sure that you get to where you want to be. But I want to be able to tell you, if you have a wish list and I can't find it in your wish list price point, and I don't want to exclude saying, you know what, your budget is $350, but if you can do $375, I think we can get all your boxes checked. How do you feel about that? Do you want to see those properties? I can eliminate them if you don't want to. They're always going to say, yeah, let me see it, because you want to really try to gather their range, right? If you give me 1 second, it looks like I have some people in the room waiting to be admitted. So I just hit admitted all, so we should be good. Okay, so anyways, going back, so if you are learning this, you're doing some basic conversations, this is an outline, and this is going to go page 8 through 12 is basically the same thing. You're going to say your wish list. You're going to start asking them questions. Who's going to be living in the house? Husband and wife, 2 kids, grandma, next gen, all the things that are important for you to learn. But you're going to have to figure out how to ask these questions in a conversation manner. And you're not going to want to go over each one. And you're not going to want to put this in front of them and then read it to them. So that's why I'm saying I'm showing you all 31 pages. You're going to want to pick the pages that are important to you. These ones you can have printed, you can have memorized, you can have whatever you want. And you're going to have 2. I want to back up. I want to say you want to have 2 versions. I have one that I'm going to send you my buyer's guide. Take a look at it. And I'm going to cover some of the highlights of this on our call that we're going to have, our Zoom call, where we're going to be able to see face to face. And then I'm going to go over some of the highlights that are important. So right now, I'm just kind of talking about going through these 2 guide options that you have and how you can modify and customize it to suit your personality and the way you like to work. Any questions on that so far?
So I think you probably answered it without saying it. So if you don't like certain pages or you don't like something in it, you can either remove certain pages or edit what you want for you, correct?
That is correct. So I'll give you an example when we get into when they talk to the property. So this Keller Williams one, the one we're looking at right now, this is from Keller Williams, and this is one that is designed for you to modify, and you can modify everything on here. You can go in and change these words. You can take out the whole thing. You can reword it, and that's what I recommend. In fact, for any new agents who's listening to this, whether you make any modifications to this or not, I recommend that you print it and go through it several times. Just read it, because it's going to really help you understand a flow and a process if you don't have one. For all of us who have all of our old dog tricks, if you will, we've been doing this a long time. We can probably do it in our sleep. Sometimes there's things we're still going to miss. I mean, there's times I get off the phone and John, my husband who works with me, he might ask me a question. I'm like, I'm not sure I got clarity on that, but it gives me a reason to talk to them again. So I'll give them some valuable information. I'll call them and just find a way to work that into the conversation. But if you're going through this and you have a system and a flow, you're going to get all of your points out and you're going to be very efficient with it. And you should be able to have this conversation in 45 minutes or less. If you're taking more than that, then someone's talking way too much. Now, if you have a really chatty client, and you're going to know that from your first interaction with them when the lead came in or your first quick consultation, then you might going to need the pro version of Zoom in order to get through that kind of phone call. Or you're going to say, hey, today we're going to take 40 minutes, we're going to cover all this information, but I'd really like to connect with you again, at another time. Let's set that up so you can get all the other stuff answered, depending on when they're coming to town. Because I have your consultation where you're learning about them, what they want. And then I think the second step of this would be, let's talk about what's on the MLS. What properties are there? And let's look at those together, because you want their reaction. You want to see their face when they see a property. Like, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's hideous. Tell me what you don't like about it, because that's going to help you be more efficient. So if they're coming to town or you're coming to an appointment, you don't want to be showing them everything that fits the basic criteria. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, and it has a pool. Because if you have 20 choices, don't you want to pick it down to the ones the 3 that are really their ideal model match, or 6? I try not to show them everything in the valley. And part of your conversation when you get these questions, I'm going to scroll through this as we go through, is your wish list here, because the conversation I want to have with my client here is, if we can do a good job of understanding this, then I'm not going to waste your time. If I only have 20 properties, don't you want me to show you the top 5 or 6 before someone else gets to those? Because if I'm showing you the dogs of the list of 20, because we're going to create a road path that makes sense on our house tour, we might be too late and we could lose out on a property that is a really good fit for you. And this helps you identify the person who's like, I have to see absolutely everything. And then you get to decide if you absolutely want to work with them. That's my opinion. But this is your wish list. And this isn't some of the stuff I was telling you, you're definitely going to want to go modify when you use this list. An example is the type of home that you're looking for. That's important. You're going to figure that out based on budget. If someone calls me and says, my budget's $150,000, I want to live in Summerlin. I know where we're going. But they tell me I need a single story for $175,000, 2-car garage and a pool in Summerlin. No, let me tell you where those houses are, right? So you're going to there's things in your mind that you're going to start eliminating and adding, and then you're going to have that educational conversation about it. When I was looking at this list before I went on this call with you guys, I was kind of looking at it and saying, square footage. Yep, great question to have. I always like to find out, what are you living in now? Are you downsizing, upsizing? What's going on, right? And how many stories? 1, 2. Don't forget we have 3s, and parts of the country. 3 stories is not unusual. East Coast, New York, all those places. 3 stories is not new. It's relatively newer for us. But if I'm talking to someone who's 55, 65, 75, 3 stories is probably not going to be on their list. Most people do not know lot size. So for me, I'm probably going to take that out of my presentation. It's important when they talk about size, but they're not going to tell me, oh, I need a 10,000 square foot lot, or I need a 5,000 square foot lot, until I start seeing them. And it's like, what? It sounds to me like lots that are under 4,000 square foot are too small for you, and I can make changes to that. Well, welcome to Las Vegas. Architectural style. I'm sorry, we just don't have a lot. If you want to see some architecture, go look at the replicas on the strip. But we do have some styles. We have our Spanish style, our Italian style. But for the most part, it's not going to be a differential factor. So it's probably not something I'm going to spend a lot of time digging in or delving into. Exterior siding. That's definitely coming out. Not really a topic that we have for here, right? Do you want a porch, deck, or both? I'm going to take that out. That for me is really a Midwest thing. Garage, what kind of, what you're looking for in terms of a garage? Okay. My question is, what size do you want? I'm not going to, attached carport. It's not really a big issue here unless I'm looking at something in an older neighborhood. So you need to modify this for Vegas. So like I said, this is designed for everything that Keller Williams covers market-wise. So you're gonna have to make some changes. And if you don't know, any of us veterans will be happy to guide you through it a little bit. What type of driveway, vehicle entrance? I'm sorry, that's not gonna be on my list. That's gonna come off, I don't care. Where they want a pool, or will hot tub do? You're gonna get that question from people right off. They're gonna tell you that, but you can leave that certainly on your list. These are things I might leave in my booklet, but they're not things I'm not going to show on this page. I'm not going to go over this page with them on the phone. I'm going to know these questions so that I can have a conversation with them. And I leave them on my presentation for you today so that you know that they're available to you and you can decide how you want to use them. Your outdoor space. I'm not going to get into dog runs. That's something they're going to figure out. For me, anything that can be modified to accomplish this, I'm not going to have it as a excluding factor on my home search, because you want them to like properties. You don't want them to find a reason why it's not going to be on their top 10 list, right? Or top 3 list. Exterior features that are important to you. That's not going to be a huge conversation for most people. So I'm not probably going to leave that on my modified list. And this continues to go on and on and on. Bedrooms, these things are going to start coming up. They're going to tell you how they use your house. There's things on here that I'm taking out because I think there are they eliminate properties before a client sees it. And as you know, we sell houses, but we really more sell, well, maybe we word that. I always tell my consumer, you know what? I don't sell you a house. You're hiring me because you want me to help you negotiate a good deal and find where these homes that meet your criteria. Because when you walk into a house, you're going to know how it feels. You can see yourself living here. And if you're not feeling that, no matter how much blabbing I do to you or trying to convince you of something, you're not going to buy that house. mean, I had an agent, a new home sales agent, God bless her. We were standing in a new home sales and she was just like, oh, your co-op's 4%. And I looked at her and I looked at my clients and I said, well, I appreciate that, but that's not going to be a deciding factor for my buyers. And it shouldn't be a deciding factor for me. It's like either the home works for them or it doesn't. Most new home sales agents will not put you in that position. Most of them are really good. So if that comes up, you know, you need to figure out how you want to address it. But anyways, these questions on here, like for instance, what finishes do you like? Countertops, flooring, cupboards. I'm going to change that. You know, when you look at houses and you find one that you have an affinity for, what are you being drawn to? Are you being drawn to the dark espresso cabinets? Are you being drawn to the light white bright cabinets? What is it for you? Because if I have a choice between two houses and they tell me I love white cabinets, you know, I'm going to show them the house with the white cabinets. You know what I mean? But I'm certainly not getting into appliances, the type of sink, cupboards, really? I mean, so these are kinds of things that I'm not going to leave on my list. Amanda, thank you for smiling. And I don't know if you're in agreement or disagreement, but those are just some of the topics that I'm just, you know, these are things that you need to go in and modify. So that's why I said, do not take this and just slam your label on it and say, okay, now I have a buyer's presentation. It just doesn't fit for our marketplace. Do you have any bathroom need to serve a specific purpose? Yeah, they do serve a specific purpose. So I'm going to probably modify that one as well. You know, now if there's a pool house, you know, different conversation. So I'm not going to go over this whole thing because I'll be driving you guys all crazy pretty soon, but please read through this, find out how you want to have the conversation with this. If you're not good at spelling and you're not good at grammar, there is a program for free you can put on your phone called Grammarly. I hope you all have it already, and it catches those things for you on your email, your Word documents, and things like this, so that you're not putting out something that is grammatically incorrect. Most people won't know the difference, but there's a few of us who do, and it's a pet peeve. But anyways, neighborhood preference. You know, I'm going to skip this. I'm going to get out of this now and move on because we've already been chit-chatting for about 30 minutes. So if you have not done this yet, you can download, like I said, it's in command. It's under the buyers and sellers guide. It's available. Please modify it for yourself. Do not use it as is. And then if you don't have anything, but you have something coming up and you need something down and dirty now, I've used this buyer's guide from the title company for years. I do not go over this page by page. I literally cover a few things. If someone, you know, I just ran into somebody and they just started having a lot of questions, I kept one of these in my car. I have it as a PDF. You can get it as a PDF from the title company. It's the title company's buyer's guide. They have buyer's guides and seller's guides. I like the way this one presents some of the topics a lot better than the Keller Williams version. And so so you know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be merging some of these things. I don't have to recreate the wheel. This is a PDF version. I can take the language. That's what the snippet tool is for. I can leave all the Chicago title stuff out and then put it into my buyer's presentation without making too much modifications. What I like about these buyer's guides is the title companies try to do a good job to put you in a position to be able to talk about you and why it's important for a buyer to be loyal to you, to pick a real estate agent. A lot of people think they need to talk to a bunch of different real estate agents because one, they're not sure they can trust you. Number two is they're not sure how you really work. So it's really our job to educate them on how we work. And so these buyer's guides have these excerpts and it tells you, hey, I'm a realtor. And what does that mean? There's a difference between a realtor and a real estate agent. I happen to be a realtor that is a listing agent and a buyer's agent. And I explain how that works. And if you're solely a buyer's agent, that's all they want to talk to you about right now anyway, since they have to sell a house to buy something. So if you determine that, you'll know how to address this topic. You know, talking about the multiple listing service. So I'm going to tell them I'm a realtor. I'm going to tell them I have a code of ethics that I live by. And we have over 16,000, I think it's down to 16,000, might be less than that now, realtors in the city. And did you know that I think it's 50–60% of them have not signed on to our multiple listing service the entire year because they're not doing any business. And even though we have other professionals in this market who may have been in this market for 30 years, what does that mean? You want to understand that you're talking to a realtor who's actually in this business doing it as a full-time person, day in and day out. Now, if you're not full-time, you can change your script. But if you are, you want to be able to talk about those points of differentiation. And this is a good place to do that, to talk about you, how you work, your team, if you're a team. If you're a sole buyer's agent, what that means, how I dedicate my time to you. This is a good time to talk about commitment. And I say the purpose of us having this conversation is I really want you to determine whether I'm a good fit for you, that you feel that you can trust me, that I can meet the needs of helping you find the right property and representing your best interest. Because I only work with so many clients at a time. And the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that I'm giving my clients the best service possible. So we want you to be committed to us as well. I know that a lot of people do not understand how buyer's agents work and think they need to talk to multiple buyer's agents. I say you might want to interview others if you wish, but if you find one that you think is knowledgeable and is going to take care of you, then you want to commit to that agent because they're committed to you. Because guess what? Real estate agents do not get paid until they actually satisfactorily close on a property with you that you're happy with. Now, what happens is, this is a good time to talk about compensation. A lot of buyers do not know how we get paid, even if they bought properties before. A lot of people bought brand new construction straight with the builder and there's no agent. So they never thought about how that worked when an agent is involved. And so you need to be able to elaborate on that. And this is a good place to do that as well. And this is also a good time to talk about the buyer's broker agreement. We talk about getting listing agreements and buyer agreements. 90% of our agents in the marketplace or more, probably 98%, do not get buyer brokerage agreements. And buyers are frankly afraid of signing a buyer broker agreement. And what I do is talk to them why it's important, because it's my commitment to them and their commitment to me, and how I can use this with new home sales. And even though it's my responsibility to make sure that they know how new home sales work, please don't go to new home sales. Don't go online and register without me. Let me register you. It's not going to save you any money by not using them. Even though that I know that some of our new home sales agent companies have started changing their conversation about that. Touchstone Homes, for instance, says that the sales force gets paid differently if there's a buyer's agent involved versus not. So there's those kind of things you might want to be aware of. But you don't need to educate your client on that. You just want to educate them on why they want to use you, why they want to go through you to get registered, and those sort of things. And what's really cool about COVID-19 right now is a lot of new home sales are letting you register online, and they may or may not require you to show up. You know what I mean? So if your client says, hey, we're driving past this D.R. Horton, blah, 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 and you're like, great, let me call them and make sure that they know that you're my client. And you can take care of that. KB is fantastic about it. Pulte's good about it. D.R. Horton for me over the years has been great about it. Lennar is a little iffy depending on who is on the sales floor. I've had good luck with Lennar in that regard, and others not so much. So you really need to know which who's on the sales floor to make that determination. So I tell you to get familiar with new homes and new home sales and make relationships with the sales agents. Most of them are fantastic. So my favorite piece of this booklet is page 11. And so I'm going to take you over there just directly. This piece. So if I'm going to talk to a new client that is relatively new to home buying, or if they are from the East Coast, this is one of my talking point charts that I really want to go over with them. And I talk to them about picking a realtor, right? Because it tells them right here, first thing, select a realtor. And I basically, I'm glad to be talking to you today. I hope that we find that we can actually be the right agent for you and get you to closing. I really have been enjoying our conversation. As you can see in this flow chart, whether you're a buyer or a seller or both, it's going to walk you through each step of the transaction. So if you are new to real estate and you haven't had any transactions yet, following this life of an escrow is going to give you a nice education and keep you on track for your file. If you need to, print this out, put it in each of your client files, and you can follow it if you don't have electronic version, or if you're not all the way up on command yet. So this is a really cool tool. I like to give this to my clients because I tell them, you know what, you can follow this and wherever we are in the transaction and keep on track. So it tells them next thing you have to do. You're a buyer. Have you talked to a lender yet? You need to be pre-approved. It tells them it's the second thing to do. So you want to make sure that they follow those rules and get approved. If you are going to be introducing them to Keller Mortgage, which I highly recommend that you do, I would tell them it's on your mobile app. I would tell them how to access it. And I would say, you know what, even if you just want to get the information, there's no obligation to use them. Yeah, I recommend you get pre-approved with them, plus you're another lender if you wish, and then you can compare costs and services and see how that goes for you. And again, it gives you a chance to replug your mobile app, why it's important, and how to have a conversation around getting pre-approved. I've seen a lot of online conversations with, I want to go see houses, I don't want my credit pulled yet, those sort of things. That's a big red flag for me. So you're gonna have to decide what that looks like for you, whether you're going to continue to move forward with them or not. I always say there's a point of grace. You need to see what you can get them to do. And it might take a couple of conversations on why it's important. And then you will usually get them to dive in at some point. You know what, you can get your pre-qualification with a lender if you like. And I like that reason as well, because it actually does a background check on people, right? So you now the lender at least knows who they are. So if you're taking somebody out, you have an idea of who they are. But anyways, basically get pre-approved before you start going through loans. Any questions so far? Anything I can answer? You guys are a quiet group. Okay. So your Zoom calls, you want to keep them under 40 minutes. We are about 42 minutes. And everything I was showing you, if we were just having a brief conversation with one of the consumers and we were jumping around, like I told you, you can actually jump on here from page to page. And you can not have to, you're not scrolling through, right? You're going to actually be jumping through to pages. Like I said, this one, page 11 is my favorite one. But if you go down to, oops, page 26 as an example, on here, it has definition of terms. So if you have a new client, you can refer them to them. So just basically it shows you how to help your client. If they're really motivated, you know, they're planning a move, you can give this to them. You can make reference to it. You're not going to go through all these pages in a conversation. Closing costs. This is the other page that I like. So when we get to writing offers, I may not have this conversation on one of my first Zoom calls. Once we find a property that we like, then I might bring up this this sheet with the client on another conversation. Hey, remember that booklet that I sent you? I really like you to take a look at page 19 or whatever it is going to be for you and say, we're getting ready to write your offer. I kind of want to show you what happens based on the kind of loan that you're getting, on what's normal and customary for charges. Also, I want to bring up having your buyer broker agreement and a purchase agreement as a PDF on a Zoom call, depending on how motivated your buyer is or how far they are into the process. Having those available for conversation as well. You want all these things available as a PDF so that you can say, hey, you know what, Robin, I'm going to send you over a copy of our contract. I want to go over it with you because I'm going to fill it out and you're going to have to make a decision on a couple of items. I'm going to show what's normal and customary. And before you get the version signed electronically, I want to be able to make sure that I fill in the contract properly for you so you know exactly what you're signing. And so that's going to be a different conversation. You're going to want to go over that. And what's great about that is if you have the Zoom Pro, you can actually record the conversation. So you always have a record for you that you've covered important items, made a client aware of something. So if you're worried about that, this is a great tool and a great format to do that you didn't have available to you before. So those are the two guides that as a buyer's agent, when I put that hat on, I reference these the most because it gives you cheat sheets. It gives you things that you can go back to the client and show. but more importantly, it keeps you on track. You make sure you're not missing out on anything. You're having a nice, fluid conversation. So when you practice your scripts, and go review these conversations and figure out how the questions that are on pages 8 through 11 in the Keller Williams version, those are great questions. They don't have those in the title company's version. So you want to make sure that you can figure out how you're going to use these forms is my guess. Excuse me, that's how I do it. I use the pages that I like, I pull them up. And like I said, when I actually are doing my Zoom calls, I don't have these full versions on there. I have the pages that I want. You can save all of these pages if you want as individual pages in a folder on a Dropbox file, a desktop file, however you want to use them. And the every conversation, I guess, in my opinion, is a little bit different. So, but you still have to have a standard of the highlights of the points that you want to cover. So any questions so far? Let me see.
I have a question.
Okay.
So what you said there about having them sign or walk them through like the BBA and maybe duties owed. So would you email them if you were at that point with this client, would you email them so that you could be looking at it like through the screen with them through Zoom, and they could be docu-signing as you talked about what they were agreeing to and so forth, or not?
That's a great question. And that's going to depend on the tech savvy of your consumer, which you'll probably get a good gauge of just by doing this Zoom call. Now, if I was probably talking to someone under 35, I would say, yeah, that could be a no-brainer. We can definitely do that because they're going to have no problem shrinking the window and looking at this and talking to you, right?
Right.
But they can also, what you can do, and this is what I would recommend, is they have the ability to share their screen as well. So you could be on a Zoom call and say, you know what, I just sent you the link to the documents that I want you to sign. And if you will pull those up and share your screen with me, I'll be able to see what you're looking at. And I can walk you through this as we go. So it would be just like us being face to face.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so let's assume that this was the buyer's broker agreement document, and you're sharing your screen with me. Then I can say, okay, this here is where we get to talk about how you want to handle the home inspection or the due diligence. You know, typically in our market, if you're a cash buyer, your due diligence period is going to be 10 to 12 days. You know, they might push back and want it to be closer to 7, depending on who the listing agent is. But if there's someone who's coming from out of state, I always try to pad that a little bit because there's always, travel, especially right now. Can I get a hotel room? Because they can't get into their timeshares, you know what I mean? So you're really going to have to see what that looks like. So you're going to have to play it by ear. So I always do what's normal and customary. And so I always say it's going to be between, 7 days on the short side, maybe 12 to 14 days on the long side. How do you feel about a home warranty? Do you want to pay for your own home warranty? Do you want, so you can actually, as you're getting to those questions, you can actually go over it with them. So you can't, if you sent it to them to sign, those questions have to be answered up front, right? So what you could do in lieu as an option number 2 is if you have say for instance, you have your transaction desk up, you can still share your screen and say, this is our contract. I'm going to go here and fill it out with you. So you know exactly what you're signing. I'm going to fill it in based on what you decide is the right answer for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So I would actually say here it is. The first thing I'm going to cover with you is your duties owed. I always get the duties owed. And if you're on a team, your supplement signed first. And quite frankly, the third thing I get signed, which some people think on a conversation I learned that most people don't do this, is the RDG, the Residential Disclosure Guide. I get that signed up early too, because a lot of times people say, oh, it's the RDG. If you can't sleep, you can actually, just read this, it'll put you to sleep. I take a different approach to that. This is my CYA document. This is the one that gets me out of jail free card, right? Because I'm telling them that this document, it's going to cover every document in a real estate transaction, and it describes it in its entirety and what its purpose is for. So if I tell you what it is and you don't remember, you actually have this document to go back for. back to for reference. If you do remember what it is, maybe it's something that it's not going to be applicable, but you have a question about, you can go to this document. It's going to cover everything. Some of the documents in this form is not going to apply to your transaction. I'm going to give you every document that you need for your transaction. And I'm going to I have the ability to describe for you what it is and why we use it. And if you still have questions, here's a guide for you. So I want you to, you can read it, go through it. I'm going to cover everything, but I want you to have this as a backup. In fact, it's required by Nevada law that you have it, and we make you sign that you actually have it. So we're going to have you sign this here. The next thing I'm going to go into is my purchase contract. Now, this is the purchase contract. I don't really like to use the purchase contract. I'm like, this is the offer document. We're submitting your offer, and we're going to basically fill in all the terms that are important to us. We're going to put on this list here all the things that we expect to convey with the property. I know you guys had classes with Candy. She does a great job of telling you why things are important, because she keeps all of us agents, out of court preferably, and our E&O insurance rates low. So make sure when you're filling out those documents, I have a conversation with them. If you have your computer up, you can actually pull up the MLS of the listing. Let's look at those photos. Here's the kitchen. We want the pot rack to convey. We want the, whatever it is that may not necessarily, some sellers think, I bought it, I added it, it can go with me. But we as a buyer and a buyer's agent say it's attached. Why did you take it with you, right? If they like the curtain rods, you got to list those kinds of things. And so the great part about doing that with a Zoom call is you have the pictures right there to reference and say, let's go over and see, make sure all the things that we want to convey are conveying. Does that make sense? So did I answer your question?
Yes, very well.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's anything in the chat box. I guess I need my eyeballs for that.
Brenda, I have a question. I had to pop on a little late, but what was the document you were going through? Two documents. And one is a buyer's guide from the title company. And I'll switch back over for you. This here is a buyer's guide from the title company. And I was just talking about, so if you don't have anything that's customized and personal, all the title companies, no matter which one that you're using, will have these for you. So Chicago Title happens to be my preferred title company. So and it happens to be a guide that I like. There's other title companies that we've used. I don't like their guide as much, but you can still use any title company's guide. So find which one that you like, just get it from them. Reach out to your title company today and say, can you send me a PDF of your buyer's guide and your seller's guide? And my point of this is that people can actually use this. If you have not had a buyer consultation before, go through and read this and make sure you understand it. Make sure you understand how to answer these questions, because they do a good job of doing that for you. If you have someone who is thinking about buying, or you got an inquiry that's saying, hey, can you help me find a rental? Oh, yeah, absolutely. We can set you up on a drip for that. I have people in my office that might be willing to help with a rental. I personally don't do them. I'd be happy to connect you. But, right now, quite honestly, if you're not busy enough, there's a way to do a rental profitably. I don't recommend you do it. I recommend you make your phone calls first. But if you literally have nothing else to do and it's convenient, you're not driving across to Timbuktu to do it, you might be able to do it and they might be a future client for you. However, you want to make sure that you can't flip them to a buyer now. Maybe they don't know they can buy. You know what I mean? So this is a great question to have. So, oh, great. Yeah. What kind of rent rate are you looking for? Oh, you pay $1,500 a month right now. That's fantastic. Yeah, there's definitely, that's a sweet spot in our market for rentals. Wow. $18,000 a year you're going to be paying to a property manager or a landlord. And over, 15 years, do you know that actually equals about $270,000? Have you actually thought about buying a property to build your own equity and, figure out what they say? No, my credit's, 450, well, you can't find a rental either. Let me give you a list of some apartments that are available. I mean, so right then how you're going to spend your time with this client and how you're going to turn it around. Now, this sheet here is going to be kind of useless because, you're not out showing homes, but place for them to take notes. They can't, it's not something they can use. So I'm never going to reference that page. So this is the form that I'm using, and it just helps people with the buyer's guide. And we talked about the one that you can download from Command. You have buyer's guides and seller's guides, and these are totally customizable. And the conversation that we had around this one is, do not just go slap your logo on it and call it good, because the language in here does not necessarily always apply to our market. So you want to go through and read this thing, every word, and figure out what you want to change and modify to have a dialogue that you're comfortable with, right? So there's things on here that it was talking about. There's questions it asked that I'm never going to ask. I'm not going to ask my client about what kind of driveway they want, because sometimes in certain price points, you might get half a driveway. That's all it's available to in the price point that you want. I can't control that. But I don't want them to not purchase, a property because of it, because they think that they're supposed to have, a driveway long enough to fit a semi, because that's what they're used to in wherever they're moving from, because nothing is like Las Vegas, right? So we're a very simple city to sell in, quite honestly, compared to other parts of the country. So you're very lucky to be in this market. It's fun. It's easy to be a buyer's agent in this market. Not easy. It's a hard job. Don't get me wrong. It's work. But you're not having to do home inspections. You're not worried about flooding basements and sump pumps, usually, very rarely. So lots of cool stuff in here. And these guides, my point of bringing these guides up, Kathy, was that if you have a new person on your team, just printing these things through, if you get over to page like 8 and 9 on here, it talks about downloading the app, the important conversation about that, having how to have a conversation about your client, like who they are, how they like to communicate, because you really want to focus on them and hone in on them so that they think, not that they think, that they believe, and you're sincere about how they want to be treated and what you can learn about them. And then here's questions, that you can ask them, but you're going to want to reword some of these questions. Some of them are worded funky, in my opinion. It's not how I'm going to word a question. And it's not, sometimes there's some stuff on here I don't want to know because it's not going to help me sell you a house. Right here, it's kind of like, what are your 5 non-negotiables? I'm not going to put a number on that. I'm going to talk to them, what are your non-negotiables? And they're going to say, you know what, I have, I don't know, what's one of a Great Dane. They're not going to want a house that has, just the 10-foot, 15-foot setback patio. It's not going to be big enough, unless it's going to be a community that has a park they can take them for a run every day. So I need to understand that. So I might ask them about how they're going to use their house. I ask them about their pets. Oh, what kind of pets? I love pets. Tell me what you got. How big is your dog? Top 5 needs. You need an office, do you need a studio, what's going on with that? That's going to come as part of your basic conversation. So I use these can be used in 2 ways. One is I don't have a Zoom call set up yet. I might be just trying to engage the person. Sometimes I offer these buyer's guides as a value. Sounds like you looking at Las Vegas. They also have these as relocation guides. If you have someone who's coming in from out of state, a relocation guide might be an option to send them if they're thinking about Las Vegas. Sometimes they're thinking about Las Vegas and Arizona. So let me get you a relocation guide so you can see how fun it is to live in Las Vegas and how easy it is to commute and travel from McCarran Airport and things like that. So you have to read these questions so you can modify them. All of this on this 31-page guide is modifiable. So you want to be able to make it your own and speak the way you want to speak. And again, don't forget to download Grammarly so you can use that. So if something is out of whack on how you're wording it, it could be corrected before you send it to somebody. Answer your question, Kath?
You did. Now, the second one is the one we have in KW, right?
Yes. Yeah. So this one that we're looking at right now, this is the one that comes from KW. So it's called your KW Guide to Home Ownership. And there's another one for sellers. There's 2. So if you were in bold, this is when they rolled these out. The first time bold came in, like it was November or so. Then this current bold, you all have access to this. It's in Command. So whether you've been to bold or not, these are the guides that you use. And if you don't have them, let me know. I did email them to Cassie and Isamar. I'm not sure if we put them on here as a file or not. And if we,
Yeah, they're in the chat.
oh, they're in the chat, so you guys can download them from there.
Oh, in the chat,
But
okay.
the ones that are in there are going to be PDFs, so you can review them, you can print them, mark them up. So when you go into the
version on command and you want to make changes to it, you'll know what you want to change.
Very good.
Yes, I have a copy on my desk that I changed, like my wish list. We talked about the driveway. I'm not going to ask them about that. I'm not going to ask them if they want a greenhouse or a shed, because those are things that are like carpet. You can add it, you know. There's other things like your wish list for your house. I'm not going to ask them about what kind of cupboards they want. That's not a term that we use here on the West Coast really anyways, unless you're reference, it's in cupboard number 2. But, you know, I want to know, you know, do you like lighter tone cabinets? You know, what, you know, are oak cabinets absolutely not going to happen? And then I talk to them about how do you feel about having them painted or stained? You know, those are very easy cabinets to adapt, you know, that kind of stuff. So we have those kind of conversations because it gives me a chance to fill them out on how they feel about those things. And you're gonna have some consumers like, I don't want to modify anything. I want something, I'm gonna show up with my suitcase and I'm moving right in, you know. And if new home construction is out of their budget, then you know that you have your homework cut out for you, right? So like if you go to this guide here on page, I think it's 11 or 12, let me just jump over to you. When I talk about modifying this list, you know, it talks about floor plans. You know, some people say, you know, I like open floor plans. I'm getting tired of the open floor plan, figure out what people are going to say. So you can think about that. But there's things in here about the, what is it? How do you envision your house? You know, your style of your interior home. There's ways of asking that question. I don't really care for the way this one particularly is answered. On this next page, it has what are your general preferences for your living family room? You know, what room sizes do you have in mind, or, you know, whatever. I'm probably gonna figure out a way to how to condense this. You know, there's things in here they ask you, like over here on the right-hand side where it says, what about your living room? How should it be situated with regard to the dining room? I'm sorry, that's not gonna go on my list. That's questions coming out, that's silly. I don't want, because my job is not to allow these questions to be things that will rule out properties before they ever seen them. Because, you know, when we show someone a property, even online with photos, it's emotional. They're going to feel whether they can live there or not. And quite frankly, whether the dining room is to the left or to the right, who cares? You know, if they like the way it looks, I'm fine with it. So I don't want them to say, well, unless they're really into feng shui, there's certain things you're not going to be able to get around. But I want them to be able to at least consider the property before they rule it out. And if you start doing some of these questions, I feel like their window gets too tight and you're gonna go, oh, I only found 2 houses on MLS. Guess what? Now all of a sudden you're not the right agent for them. So you got to make sure you keep it broad enough. What other questions do you have? Questions?
I don't have any. That was really great.
We're at the hour mark and I feel like I've been talking my head off like a chattering head, because all of you people have your screen blacked out. Debbie gets mad at me because I do that too. She's like, where are you? And I'm always like, I take my little Post-it off my screen. I'm like, oh, I'm right here.
No, you had to see me with my hat today, but oh well.
No, that was excellent. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. So like I said, so they put those documents in the chat. Feel free to download those, find them on command. Like I said, I'm going to end up probably doing some version of the buyer's guide from Chicago Title with the Keller Williams one and merge the way I like it. Because there's, if you look at those 2 documents side by side, the escrow chart that I showed you, I really love that flow. It just makes my conversation easy, and I can add, depending on who my audience is, I can modify it and go into depth, or I can just tailor it back because they already know. And when you start getting, we bought, 3 houses in the last, 8 years, I'm going to talk to that client way different than someone who hasn't bought a house in 10 or 15 years. And just because someone bought houses many times in the past, but they haven't bought anything in the last, I want to say 7, 8 years, I'm going to treat them like a new home buyer. And so how I apologize to them up front is I tell them, I said, listen, I'm going to probably say things to you and you might be in your head saying, duh, we're not stupid. And I tell them, just forgive me, give me grace up front. I go through a process because I want to make sure I hit all the points. I never want to assume what you know or what you don't know. And it just keeps me on track to make sure I cover all the highlights for you. Because I don't know what you know or don't know, or how much you know and how much you've forgotten because it's been a long time. And if you come from, anywhere from the Midwest East, your closings and process work way different than we do on the West Coast. Like when the CFPB came out back in the day and they were coming out with all these rules, and someone says, well, how do we do that with the escrow signing? And then the head of the people who are making all the rules said, what's the escrow signing? You know, you understand why we have to do the kind of explaining that we do.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there anyone here who has not had a buyer consultation before?
I haven't.
You have not yet, Amanda?
Mhm,
Okay.
Not really.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, if you have any questions, Amanda, let me know. If you want to go over any kind of conversation before you have a consultation, let me know. I've seen you've been on Zoom call, every Zoom call that I popped on, I've seen your smiling face.
No, I'm
So
not.
I appreciate what you're doing because that's what I did when I first got licensed 15 years ago. My background was financial services. And at the beginning of the call, if you missed it, I basically jokingly said, I had to have more education and training to sell you a $5,000 mutual fund or to place your order for, you know, $1,000 of IBM stock than I had to sell you a $500,000 house. That to me was just mind blowing. It just,
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? I said, I can just now go sell someone a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what the hell I'm doing because,
Exactly.
sorry, don't know what I'm doing because quite frankly, getting your license is not enough as you're probably figuring out, right? There's a lot to it after that.
Exactly.
There's a lot of things that you tested on that you're not going to be using right away in residential real estate. So,
Yeah.
yep, so you got to figure out that what that recipe and mix is for you.
Well, I'll put you on speed dial.
Okay, text is better.
Text.
Yeah, actually, you know what? You might see me. I go into 605. I'm happy to answer questions. We have a lot of people who are on 605 answering questions that have a significant amount of experience. So feel free to do that as well. Because a lot of times we have agents who are too shy to ask, and your question is very beneficial to other people. And so,
Okay.
but there's some things that if you know that are candy only. I call them candy only questions because there's so much gray area. So you're going to get a lot of agents who give you opinions. But if it's, you know, a time when you can reach Candy, you know, I always, she's my stopgap. It's like, you know what, here's what I've done. Here's what I think. Am I thinking about this properly? And sometimes she'll say, yes, but, or no, you're right. Or no, that changed. Have you read the contract? You know, so there's things that come up. So like she recommends, please read your contract and please read these two documents because you are going to get a ton of information. And it really helps you with the flow. So if you don't already have a role play partner, Amanda, do you have one?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I do.
A reliable one?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say find one because just having this conversation and talking it out is going to put you leaps and bounds ahead. So when you do have a client in front of you, you're not going to be stumbling through it. You're not going to be looking at your notes to say, what question do I want to ask? And if you go to the very top thing that I put in the chat box, the very, very first thing that says location, price, motivation, are you working with an agent? Do you have a mortgage? If you work around those frameworks and elaborate from there, you'll hit all the highlights typically. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do a lot of practice, more practice.
Yep. And the next thing I want you to do is find out who your preferred lender is going to be. And so, and kind of get some loan guidelines.
Yep,
If you
I
read
do
these
have
guys,
that.
if you read this title company's brochure, it has information on loans.
Mhm.
Get familiar with VA, FHA, conventional, and buy downs. Buy downs basically people where don't get confused. It's not a different loan type. It's just a part of a loan where they contribute additional money to buy down their loan rate. Sometimes if the rate's too high and it's putting them above their price point, we might be able to get a seller concession to pay for that to go towards their buy down rate. Does that make sense? So you just want to learn some of those tricks of the trade as you go along. And right now is the best time to do it, is to all the what ifs. And if I can answer any questions for anyone I can't even talk today. If I can answer any questions for anybody any time, let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Nice chatting with you all. I'm going to say goodbye
Yeah.
for now.
All right. Thank you for
Okay.
doing this.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.